from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett. Now we're going to turn from politics to technology, and we're going to be talking with Tom Starr, who's a lead member of technical staff at the AT&T labs outside of Chicago. Tom was named one of the 100 most powerful people in telecom by Global Telecom Business Magazine just a few years ago. He holds 20 patents in the field of telecom, and he is the president of the Broadband Forum, MS degrees and BS degrees in computer science and engineering from the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. He's also the author of a fascinating book, Virtual Vengeance, a novel that is centered on futuristic, and Tom, you can tell me if that's a good word or not, technology. So, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've been a leader and innovator in telecom for 25 years. You have 20 patents. You've written 3 nonfiction books. Now you're writing fiction. Tell us about that.
Well, Jeff, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would write fiction, I would say I'm an engineer. I don't write fiction. And I surprised myself. I think this was sort of stimulated by seeing what's going on in the internet and in the industry wide, and in a variety of companies. Take a look at what's going on with interactive gaming, social networks, highly targeted advertising that's tied into web search. And this really has been a concern of mine for a long time in terms of the impact of technology on society. I've seen a number of occasions where really cool technology is developed without a lot of thought of the impact on society. So this sort of, I think, stimulated a story that suddenly appeared in my mind one day, and it really compelled me. It was a story that somebody had to tell, and it was me. And so I found myself compelled to write this story. And it's basically, very briefly, a story of in a world where teaching machines have become so effective that they've made teachers and classrooms obsolete, and everyone's taught by machine in this world. And the hero of the story is a professor of computer science at the University of Illinois, who discovers that advertising agency has slipped some brainwashing into these teaching machines on a nationwide scale. He discovers this, and the advertising firm and executive there silences him. He murders this professor. And later, the murderer finds out that this professor of computer science had created a new form of life, and that new life form was very vengeful and was very hard to kill. And so as the story plays out, the murderer has to reckon for what he has done. So that's it. It was an exciting story, and I really enjoyed writing it.
Let's pull that back a little bit, and just in terms of technologies that you brought up. For one of those that you brought up was the ability to brainwash a large population. Yeah. Is that realistic? Do you see that as being possible in either today or in the future?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that we're already partway there. And the scary part is that most people either don't know or they don't care. And you may ask yourself, well, why don't people care about the fact that their behavior, their actions are being influenced so much already today? And well, if you read the book, you may find yourself becoming very paranoid about why people don't care that they're influenced so much by what they see in advertising. So in the story, the advertising executive plays the villain, and but if you take a look at what's happening in the real world, when you do web searches, when you go shopping, when you look at news items or whatever, all that's being watched. And you have to remember that every time you do a web search, that's not free. Most people think, oh, it's free. It's not. You're providing valuable information to the company that does the web searching. They know how to monetize this information. They're making lots of money off of this. And this is being used for advertisers who then provide highly targeted advertising that modifies your behavior. And so that's already there today. And it's advertisers are incredibly sophisticated and effective at what they do, and it's very subtle. And most times people don't realize that sometimes even unconsciously messages are being provided and influencing your behavior.
Is there anything is that just something that actually because it is cheap, we're just going to keep doing it, or is there something we should do about it?
Yeah, well, I'm in my business, of course. My day job is involved with internet technology. So, I think everybody likes the fact that the internet has all the power it does available for free, not really free.
Right.
And I don't think there's any way that we're going to back away from this. I think it's more a matter of educating people so they are aware of what's going on, that they are aware of the advertising and aware of the subtle ways that when you go to various websites or web searches that you're being steered towards certain things. So I think it's a matter of advertising has been around for ages and it's always influenced us. And so, but more than ever, I think people need to be aware of the power that has.
I wonder if we'll even get to a time when, let's say, a wealthy person could kind of anonymize themselves by paying for some sort of services that will let them then use the internet, use all these services, but without ever really conveying any personal information, and pay a premium for doing so.
Yeah, there actually been some abortive attempts at doing something like that. They really haven't been seeing a lot of success. There's this idea of cookies. Most people are probably familiar with cookies, and I'm sorry to tell you that cookies are sort of old-fashioned now, and that there actually are far more powerful techniques being used today that again tracks your activities, your interests, your purchases on a personal level. And they don't even need to put, people think they can protect themselves by wiping the cookies off of their computer. Well, that helps a little bit, but unfortunately, things have gotten far more sophisticated than that. And there have been some efforts to try and anonymize things and protect it. The trouble is it just gets unwieldy. It's a hassle.
Yeah, you kind of painted a picture here of this advertising genius. And I was thinking, John Hamm plays the protagonist on Mad Men.
Yeah.
It's like you have Hal, the computer from 2001 now playing. Your character, kind of an iconoclast, viewed as an oddity by the computer community, and also Russian. So why did you, when you're writing your character, why did you characterize your character that way?
Yeah, well, I've known a number of people from Russia, and they're fascinating people. They're over the top kind of personalities, which makes for a great character in a book.
Right.
And they're very outspoken and a little impetuous. And all this makes for a great, just a fabulous character. And they're brilliant people also, at least, people I've dealt with that came from Russia. And so, I just, know these people, and they've always struck me as being, gee, what a great character for a story. It makes it interesting, it's not just another, Joe off the street. And so I think it adds some interest to the story.
It is kind of interesting as we watch the nightly news and we see what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. Impetuous, creative, are not some of the kind of the words that we think of when we think of people like Putin and the rest of that. It seems to almost be kind of a different characterization of Russians that you're talking about that oftentimes we see in the nightly news. But that's just an aside.
Yeah.
Getting back to your book, in Virtual Vengeance, teaching machines. This Russian is the last human teacher. And all teaching is now done by machines. Now, again, how realistic is that? Like, how do you teach creativity? How do you teach logic? Well, how do you teach? How do you replicate the teaching mind in a machine?
Yeah. Well, as is laid out in the book, computer-based teaching. It could, in theory, be incredibly effective because it'd be like having the world's best tutor dedicated to the student. I mean, it's one-on-one, and it learns what works with that student, and it teaches just and particularly uses certain teaching techniques that work just for that student, and is absolutely attuned to the student. So if the student is missing a point, the machine immediately knows this and approaches it from a different way. It's like I said, it's like having the world's best tutor right there.
And how does the machine know?
So this, is part of the story, and actually you see this in the real world. Computers are playing a bigger part in a lot of the schools now. The students are getting iPads, and they're doing a lot of work on the iPads. Of course, in my story, this goes way beyond that. But the hero in the story, this Professor Yuri Petrov, one of the points he comes back to time and again in the story is that in this story, all the teachers have been replaced by teaching machines. There are hardly any teachers left, and he's always saying to everybody, "We need human teachers. You need human interaction. You need that variability. You need that human element in the teaching." I very much believe that, and I think that's a huge part. But I do think there is also a role for computers and helping in teaching. If you take a look at today's education system, it is incredibly expensive. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's unbelievable that we spend so much money on this. Of course, there's a lot of value in education. And on top of that, I think a lot of people would have to agree that education is not so effective.
Let me stop you right there. We're going to come back and talk to that in the second part, also with singularity. Again, we're talking with Tom Starr. Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett, and we're talking with Tom Starr, one of the most powerful people in the nation when it comes to the telecom industry, but who's also written a book, Virtual Vengeance, a novel about a rather futuristic play on technology. Tom, before we talked about technologies, we talked about your book a bit. What are other people saying about your book? What kind of reviews are you getting?
Yeah, I've gotten some really very nice reviews. I'm very, very pleased. People, some of the readers have commented me that the writing is similar style to Michael Crichton, who, of course, wrote Jurassic Park and some other bestsellers. And other people, I just love it. They tell me, it's a page turner. I had one guy complaining to me that he was up until 2 a.m. because he couldn't put it down. I mean, you just couldn't ask for better comments from people. So, if you go on to Amazon.com, you can find the reviews for yourself. There's quite a few there, and quite favorable. And if you're interested, go there, take a look. It's available as in paperback as well as a Kindle ebook. And I've been getting some great feedback. People love it.
Congratulations. Now,
thank you.
Johnny Depp has a movie, Transcendence, which has kind of a similar theme. Can you kind of compare and contrast for us?
Well, there is some similarity there, and unfortunately, it's another one of these cases where the movie wasn't as good as the book. And in the movie, you do have this idea of a computer science professor who is shot and ends up with his mind being transferred into a computer. So there's a little bit of a thread common with my story there. However, I think I've done a much more accurate and detailed technical discussion of the issue. The director of that movie, Transcendence, didn't seem to worry too much about little details like gravity and information theory and having a contractor build an enormous underground computer center in a couple of weeks. So I think people have made comments about my story, how it's very believable and seems to be well grounded in real science.
Tom, you are at AT&T Labs just outside of Chicago, one of the premier R&D labs in the world. And you're working primarily in terms of local access and networking.
Right.
So can you try to tell us, try to give us an image, let's say 5 years from now, I'm not talk far out in the future, let's say 5 years from now, what kind of stark differences are people at home networkers, going to be experiencing?
Yeah, that's a good question for me because, the technology I work on is about five or 6 years out in the future. What I'm working on today, people will, be seen in that time. And I'm involved, internationally, both in a couple different international telecommunications standards organizations to help spread this technology worldwide. And it's probably not surprising to tell you that the internet performance, the speed of the internet is going to be vastly faster and get out to more and more places. But also, the networks are going to get smarter in terms of its ability to support a wide range of services with high quality, and to avoid, hopefully, some of the problems people experience where the video kind of starts and stops, or it doesn't play as smoothly as you'd like. I think we'll get past those issues. And also, one of the big things I put a lot of my attention on is just trying to make it easy for customers, to make it so that we avoid technical problems, that it's a reliable service, and if there is an issue, the problems can be rapidly resolved. So, I think people are clearly adopting the internet more and more. And more people are working at home. I think that's going to be a surprisingly increasing trend, where people work at home, and they can do it because they have the very high quality, very high speed, reliable internet access at home that gets them anywhere.
We've kind of progressed in my lifetime from the mainframes to the PCs, to the tablets, to the phones. Google Glass. I mean, where are we going here? I mean, go on a little bit more than 5 or 6 years out. Go into the realm of virtual vengeance. Are we talking towards implants, and are we talking about that in what's left of my lifetime?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about implants, just because medically it's risky. I would think. I don't know if we need to resort to implants. I think it's pretty obvious that the world's going to go more and more wireless. You've already seen this, but it's going to get much more so. You'll have a small device. I think one of my pet notions is that you'll have a little thing that's maybe in your pocket, or clipped to a belt or in your purse or any place. That's carrying, it has, most of the, functionality, electronics, but no display, and no keyboard, nothing like that. And you talk about Google Glass. I think Google Glass will look like a toy 5 years from now, but there'll be things that go far beyond Google Glass that get you away from having that little, 4 or 5 inch screen on your cell phone. You won't need a screen on your cell phone because you'll be able to, see it all. Maybe something like a next generation Google Glass, or maybe it's going to be something that somehow gets directed into your nervous system. And you don't need a keyboard. There'll be, I think, a breakthrough there with both the input and output. I think that's one of the big restrictions of today's systems is the human input-output. And, we need to get away from the small screen.
Well, what kind of display are you envisioning here?
Well, getting very speculative, I'm thinking of something that hacks right into the human nervous system. Right? If you can hack into the optic nerve, hopefully without a surgeon, slicing you open, right? But doing it in a much more, in less invasive way, that could be very exciting. And actually, I'm playing with a concept like that in a story, another science fiction story I'm just starting to write right now. So we'll see how that goes.
Are you one of those authors that once you have a book inside of you, you pretty much have to write it down in order to get it out of your system and get it out onto the paper, to get it out of your mind?
Absolutely. That's what happened to me with Virtual Vengeance. It was a story that, it's the story that drove me to write fiction, do something I never thought I'd do. It was just the story was so, I thought I was so excited by it. I just had to tell the story.
Privacy is one of those issues that people talk about a lot. When you read the paper and you see these debates on privacy, what kind of what stirs your pot? What gets you? What do you think that people should really be focusing on?
Well, I do think privacy is a big issue. It's one of my sort of hot buttons that we have to be cautious about. Again, as today, when people are browsing the web and going to websites, I think they have no idea. There's all this uproar about the National Security Agency and how they're spying on everyone. And I kind of laugh a little bit when I hear all that, because sure, they're doing that. And we all knew they were always doing it. And I'm not saying that's all good at all. But the reason I laugh a little bit is because I think you should be far more worried about, and I don't want to name any companies by name, okay, but some of the big, web companies and what they're doing. I'd be a lot more worried about them, all right, because, with things like the NSA, there is one way or another some exposure, some oversight, but with some of these various social networking and other web companies, there's not as much oversight and exposure as you might like to see there. So I'd be far more worried when it comes to privacy about, and it may not even be some of the big name companies that come to mind right away. It could be some of the smaller ones that are doing things. I'd worry much more about some of those private companies.
You talked about singularity, and that's a term that I'm not familiar with. Is that something that, why don't you tell us about that? Because I did some research, and it's an intriguing concept.
Yes, it is. So singularity is a word that describes a predicted or possible event in the future where computers, the computing power and sophistication of computers gets to the point where it's as smart as a human mind. And at that point, it then might be possible to transfer a human mind into a computer. And of course, once you do that, interesting things happen. Of course, you might have immortality, maybe. You might be able to travel at the speed of light, and geography is now meaningless. And I describe all this in the story. So one of the things that I do in Virtual Vengeance, which, if I could be a little immodest, I like to think I did better than some of these other stories about, humans' minds getting into a computer, is I try to get into a lot more depth and technical accuracy on what it would be like to live inside a computer. It would be an incredibly disorienting environment, that's for sure. But you would have some of these almost superhuman capabilities. It would be pretty exciting. And so the story kind of takes advantage of some of that.
Well, I certainly would never forget my brother's birthday, and there are some things that are kind of normal for people, but it is I think we've seen that with Watson, with what's going on with the computer that won Jeopardy, was able to put together disparate thoughts.
Yes, right. The IBM's Watson computer is I think a real eye-opener. And also, if you take a look at some of the so-called big data systems, you know, if you look at Siri today, it will look like a toy in 5 years from now.
Well, Tom, this has been a fascinating talk, and it's lasted far too short. I'd like to have you on again. Tom Starr, Virtual Vengeance, thank you very much, sir. This has been a real joy.
Thank you, Jeff. Great.